Welcome to Vox Orthodoxa. Today we are walking into a pharmacy, but I need you to erase the image of the fluorescent lights, the guy in front of you buying gum, and the waiting area for your flu shot.
Right.
This isn't that kind of pharmacy. This is a pharmacy for the human condition. We are cracking open Volume 5 of the Philokalia, specifically looking at the translation and commentary by the renowned Romanian theologian, Father Dumitru Stăniloae.
It's such a beautiful framing, calling it a pharmacy. And really, the Philokalia, I mean, it's a term that probably needs a little dusting off for most people.
For sure.
In Greek, it literally translates to the love of the beautiful. It's this massive ancient anthology of texts.
Written by who, mostly? Mostly
hermits, monks, and ascetics, written between, well, 4th and 15th centuries. And to your point about the pharmacy, these weren't written as abstract philosophy or, dry theology to win arguments. They were written as diagnostic manuals. They are designed to cure the fractures, the anxieties, all the sicknesses of the human mind.
It's essentially a medical journal for the soul. And today, we're zooming in on one specific doctor in this lineup, St. Peter of Damascus. He's writing in the 12th century, which, usually makes people think, okay, this is going to be unreadable. But the way he approaches information feels incredibly modern. In the text, he's actually described as a great synthesizer.
That title is the key. It's the key to understanding him. St. Peter wasn't trying to be the cool new influencer inventing a brand new spiritual system.
Right.
He was a monk who was seemingly overwhelmed by the sheer volume of data available to him. I mean, you have to imagine, even in the 12th century, there were centuries of writings. The Desert Fathers, the theologians, the scriptures. He read everything.
Which is a feat in itself.
Exactly. He read every spiritual book available to him, and he realized something that I think we feel acutely today.
Oh, yeah.
For the average person, this mountain of wisdom is paralyzing. It's just too much. Where do you even start? So his mission became compression. He set out to condense the entire tradition into a practical, usable guide.
He wasn't inventing, he was organizing.
Perfectly put. He didn't claim to invent a single new concept. He just wanted to organize the chaos into a coherent path.
There is a detail in his introduction that I found really grounding, and it sort of sets the tone for everything that follows. He explains why he's writing this.
Yeah.
It's not to get famous. It's not to build a following. He calls it a reminder to himself. He uses words like wretched and unworthy, which, I'll be honest, can sound a bit heavy to modern ears.
Sure, it can land wrong.
We're used to self-empowerment, not self-abasement. But reading it, the context didn't feel like self-loathing. It felt more like he was overwhelmed by gratitude or just luck.
It's humility born of awe, not depression. That's a crucial distinction. He looked at his life, his ability to think, to breathe, to understand these texts, and he saw them as gifts.
Things he didn't earn.
Things he hadn't earned. He was terrified of being ungrateful. He explicitly says he wrote these things down, essentially, so he wouldn't forget the medicine that saved him. It was a fail-safe.
A fail-safe against his own forgetfulness. I love that. Writing is an act of gratitude. So that is our mission for this deep dive.
Let's do it.
We are going to extract what St. Peter calls the royal path, his middle way, and we're going to see if we can apply it to a modern person. Someone stuck in traffic on the 405, worried about a quarterly review.
That low-level hum of anxiety.
Exactly. That seems to be the soundtrack of modern life. The big question is, how can a text from a 12th century monk help us navigate the stress of the 21st century?
Well, the first obstacle we have to clear, and St. Peter clears it immediately, is the environment. There is this massive misconception that this level of spiritual clarity is reserved for professionals.
Right. I'm not a monk.
Yeah, we think, okay, this is for people who wear black robes. If I want this peace, I need to quit my job, move to a cave, and eat nothing but dried bread and locusts.
I have certainly had days where the cave option looked pretty appealing. Just drop the phone in a river and walk away.
We all have. But St. Peter shuts that down. He corrects it explicitly and with quite a bit of force. This is one of his most liberating insights.
What does he say?
He argues that salvation, that deep stabilizing peace, is available, and I'm quoting the text here, in any place, at any time, and in any social state.
That's a sweeping claim. Any place, any time.
And he backs it up with examples. He says, look around. People have found God in wealth and in poverty, in marriage and in celibacy, in the deep desert and right in the middle of crowded marketplaces.
Okay.
But here's the kicker, and this is why he's so brilliant. He points out that people have also lost their souls in all those exact same places.
Right. Okay, so it's not the blade.
You can be miserable, distracted, and full of ego in a monastery, and you can be holy, centered, and peaceful in a palace. The location isn't the variable.
So if the GPS coordinates aren't the variable, what is? What's the switch that determines whether you're at peace or in chaos?
The switch is the will. St. Peter makes a rigorous distinction between one's own will and God's will.
Okay, now that phrase, God's will, might sound abstract to some listeners.
Totally. But in this context, think of it as reality or providence. It's simply the way things are.
Let's drill down on that. Because abandoning your will usually sounds like giving up. It sounds like becoming a doormat or being passive.
It's actually the opposite of passivity. It's active alignment. Think about where our stress comes from. Usually it's the friction between what is happening
And what we want to be happening.
Yes.
Exactly. Okay, give me an example.
You're stuck in traffic. That is the reality. That is God's will or the providential reality of that moment. You are stopped. Your will, however, is to be moving 60 miles per hour.
Hey, I'm angry about it.
You are gripping the steering wheel. Your blood pressure is rising. You're furious. Why? Because you are insisting on a reality that does not exist. St. Peter suggests that the righteous person is simply the one who loves the reality of the moment more than their own fantasy of how the moment should go.
So the suffering isn't caused by the traffic. The traffic is just cars on asphalt. The suffering is caused by my argument with the traffic.
Precisely. St. Peter says we often prioritize our own thoughts over the reality God has placed us in. We are in love with a hypothetical timeline where we aren't late, and we hate the actual timeline we are living in.
And the royal path is about collapsing that distance.
Yes. Accepting, I am here. This is where I am meant to be right now. That acceptance is where the peace lives. It's dropping the rope in the tug of war with reality.
It's a radical acceptance of the present. But let's be real. Sometimes the present is worse than traffic. What about when we've messed up, when we feel guilt? St. Peter has this section on the psychology of despair that honestly felt like he was describing a very modern mental trap.
Oh, this is a brilliant piece of psychological observation. I think anyone listening will recognize this pattern immediately.
He talks about the enemy or the devil or just negative thought patterns using a specific two-step strategy against us.
He breaks down the mechanism of how we get trapped in these self-destructive loops. He says the enemy uses two contradictory lies, but he times them perfectly.
How does the trap work? Break down the two steps for us.
Okay, so trick number one happens before you make a mistake. You're tempted to do something, maybe lose your temper, lie, look at something you shouldn't, whatever.
Right.
In that moment, the whisper in your ear is very specific. It says, God is overwhelmingly merciful. It's a small thing. Go ahead, do it. It doesn't matter.
He's the philanthropist, the lover of mankind. He won't mind.
You're human. It's the classic, it's easier to ask forgiveness than permission. It's minimization. Just one more won't hurt.
So it lowers the barrier to entry, makes the mistake look tiny.
Exactly. But then, and this is the crucial part, the second the deed is done, the strategy flips 180 degrees. Immediately the whisper changes.
To what?
Two, you are lost. God is just and harsh. How could you do that? You've ruined everything. There is no hope for you now.
That is emotional whiplash. First, it's no big deal, and 10 seconds later, it's the end of the world.
And St. Peter warns that this second phase, the despair, is actually more dangerous than the sin itself.
Why? I would think feeling bad about a mistake is a good thing. Shows you have a conscience, right?
Regret is different from despair. Regret makes you want to fix it. It moves you toward repair. Despair makes you want to hide. St. Peter says despair stops you from healing because if you believe the case is hopeless,
You won't go to the doctor.
you won't go to the doctor. You'll just wallow in the sickness. You'll say, well, I'm already broken. Might as well keep breaking things.
It's a paralysis mechanism.
Yeah.
It keeps you stuck in the mud.
It is. And the way out, according to St. Peter, is knowledge. You have to know the playbook. When you feel that crushing weight of I'm unfixable, you have to recognize it as a lie.
Is the second half of the trap.
Specifically, the second half of the trap. You have to remember that the goal of the spiritual life is healing, not destruction. You have to call out the bluff.
It's almost like realizing you're being gaslit by your own dark thoughts. Once you see the pattern-minimized risk, followed by maximized shame, it loses some of its power. You say, I see what you're doing there.
Exactly.
But this brings up a harder question, one that St. Peter doesn't shy away from. If the goal is healing, why is the process so painful?
Yeah.
Why is life so hard? Why do we suffer if God is this benevolent healer?
This is where St. Peter introduces perhaps his most powerful and frankly most visceral metaphor, God as the doctor of souls.
Medical analogies usually land well, but this one felt intense.
It is intense. You have to remember, in the 12th century, surgery wasn't clean and anesthetized. To save a patient, a doctor often had to do things that look like torture.
Cauterizing a wound with fire.
Cutting out gangrene without anesthesia. St. Peter says life's trials are exactly that. They are surgery for the soul.
So the suffering isn't punishment, because that's the default human assumption. I'm having a bad time, therefore I must have done something wrong, or the universe hates me.
St. Peter completely reframes that. He says, imagine you are the patient on the operating table. You are screaming because of the pain, but the doctor isn't hurting you to be cruel. The doctor is cutting you to save your life.
But we don't understand that.
We don't. St. Peter notes that we often faint under the knife. We give up or lose faith because we don't understand the purpose of the pain. We think the pain is the problem, but actually the pain is the cure for a deeper, invisible sickness.
Okay, let's make this practical. If I lose my job, or go through a really painful breakup, or get sick, what sickness is being cured there? It just feels like I'm losing something good.
St. Peter would ask, what were you attached to? Maybe it's the disease of pride. Maybe it's the disease of relying on your job title for your entire self-worth.
The sickness of thinking money guarantees safety.
There you go. The loss is painful, absolutely. But St. Peter would argue it's the pain of a tumor being removed. It's detaching you from something that wasn't actually giving you life, even if you thought it was.
It changes the question from, why is this happening to me, to what is this trying to heal in me?
Exactly. And that is a hard shift to make. It requires a tremendous amount of trust in the surgeon. You have to believe that the hand holding the knife is actually benevolent.
It's a huge leap of faith.
It is. But if you can make that shift, suffering stops being meaningless trauma and starts being a recovery process.
This leads us back to the title of our deep dive, the royal path. We mentioned earlier that this is the middle way. How does this surgical intensity fit with a middle way?
Well, the royal path is about balance, or in Greek, metron measure. St. Peter was writing in a time of extremes. You had radical ascetics who were, practically starving themselves to death, thinking the body was evil.
And then the opposite.
And you had hedonists living entirely for pleasure. St. Peter advises against both. He says, do not kill the body, kill the passions. Suicide is not holiness, but neither is obesity or laziness.
It's about sustainability.
Yeah.
You need the vehicle, the body, to make the journey. You don't slash the tires, but you also don't let the car drive itself off a cliff.
Right. But here is the part of his theology that I found most optimistic and honestly surprisingly psychological for a medieval text. It's his view on habit.
This really struck me too. We're so used to the idea of original sin, or this idea that humans are naturally selfish, broken, and nasty. But St. Peter seems to take a different stance.
He does, and this is vital. St. Peter argues that goodness is actually our natural state.
Wait, really? Our natural state?
Yes, he says virtues are natural to us. We were designed to be kind, courageous, and peaceful. That is the factory setting.
So why are we, well, look around. Why are we stressed, angry, greedy, and anxious?
Habit. In Romanian, the word used is obise. St. Peter says we aren't naturally evil. We have just learned to be stressed. We have learned to be greedy. We practiced it.
He calls it an unnatural habit.
An unnatural habit. It's a second nature that we've pasted over our true self.
So anxiety isn't my identity. It's just something I practiced?
Exactly. Think about it. You weren't born worrying about your credit score. You weren't born worrying about what people think of your shoes. You learned it. You practiced it for years, reinforced it with dopamine loops until you became an expert at being anxious.
That is incredibly relieving. Because if I learned it,
you can unlearn it. That is the core of the royal path. St. Peter says we don't have to become someone new. We don't have to go out and acquire peace like you acquire a new skill.
What do we do then?
We just have to strip away the bad habits to reveal the good person who is already there underneath.
It's like restoring an old house. You aren't building a new living room. You're just scraping off the ugly wallpaper that someone put up in the 70s.
That's a perfect analogy. He uses the image of the sun. The sun is always shining. We just have to open the shutters. The darkness isn't a thing that needs to be fought. It's just the absence of light caused by the shutters of our habits.
We just have to crank them open.
And the light, which is our natural state, floods in.
So, if the work is opening the shutters or scraping the wallpaper, what is the actual tool? How do we start that process today, right now?
St. Peter goes back to his original motivation, the thing we started with, gratitude. Or more specifically, remembrance.
Remembrance of what?
Remembrance of gifts. Remember, he wrote this whole book because he was terrified of forgetting what God had done for him. He says the deepest spiritual practice is simply remembering what has been given to us.
And to be clear, he's not talking about remembering that you got a promotion or a new car.
No, he goes much more fundamental. He talks about the ability to breathe, the fact that you exist at all, the fact that you have a mind that can understand these words.
Wow.
He says these are gifts we didn't earn. We didn't earn our heartbeat. It's a gift given to us moment by moment.
It really is the antidote to the scarcity mindset.
It is. Anxiety focuses entirely on what we lack. I don't have enough money. I don't have enough time. I don't have enough status. St. Peter's peace comes from hyper-focusing on what we have already received.
Powerful.
If you truly realized, just for a second, the statistical impossibility of your own existence and the fact that you are being sustained in this moment by a force of love, it becomes very hard to be anxious about a deadline.
It grounds you in abundance rather than lack.
Exactly. And that gratitude dissolves the habit of anxiety. You can't be terrified and truly grateful at the same time.
So let's bring this all together. We've covered a lot of ground on this royal path. If we had to sketch out the map for our listener, what are the waypoints?
Sure, let's look at the map. First, realize the location doesn't matter. You don't need a cave. You don't need to quit your job. Peace is available right now, in your city, in your traffic jam, if you align your will with reality.
Okay, number one.
Second, watch out for the despair trap. It's a two-part con. Minimization before the sin, maximization after. If you mess up, don't let the enemy convince you it's hopeless. That's just part two of the lie.
Got it. What's third?
Third, view your difficulties as surgery. The pain is real, but it's healing you of something deeper if you trust the surgeon. Ask what is being removed.
And finally,
remember that your stress is just a bad habit. It's not who you are. Your natural state is good. You just need to unlearn the layers you've added on top through remembrance and gratitude.
I really love that idea that we are naturally good. It makes the work of self-improvement feel less like a war against ourselves and more like a recovery mission.
It changes everything. You aren't fighting yourself. You are rescuing yourself. You're uncovering the masterpiece that's been covered in dust.
So here's a question I want to leave you with today listening to this deep dive. St. Peter says your stress and your worry are just habits costumes you've put on over the years. If you stripped away those habits of worry, if you took off the mask of anxiety you've been wearing for so long, who is the person waiting underneath?
It might be time to introduce yourself to them.
Thank you for joining us on Vox Orthodoxa.
Until next time.